the appropriate attire these days, and I just wanted you to see what it looks like and the recommended approach.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Avishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May He guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace.
So, good evening from Hollywood. I'm not saying that we live in a time of suspended animation, but I was thinking a little earlier, I want everyone to probably understand that we here in a typical church, temple, synagogue, mosque in the United States are under lockdown. And yet, we meet on Friday nights here and read the very highest and elevating and inspiring words of our beloved uncle, Swami Abhedananda, who stayed with us in America for so many years, 20, 25 years. And we stay as close as is ultimately possible to each her own and his own, in a state of calm, in a state of joy. And I wanted to start out with the mask on to let you know, in case you were wondering, that this locked up, locked down church is aware of what agonies planet Earth is undergoing now. There are different levels, different dimensions of where we place our mind. And we are ever more conscious because of the conditions of our life and the people who constitute the community of the Ramakrishna Order of India in Southern California these days. So, I don't know if this is oversimplifying, but basically we check it out. The condition that we and others around the world in great numbers are facing now. And then, don't you see, having done that, we try to put our mind back in high gear as quickly as possible. You know what India's gift is? We've learned it through staying with Swami Vedanta. It's to add to the three levels of consciousness of which the West is aware: the waking, the dreaming, and the dreamless sleep stage, with the God conscious, superconscious waterfall of which India is imminently and immediately aware. And this is the great gift which gives us, among other things, an awareness of God country. So we have a way of behaving. And as soon as we can, we try to get that gear shift back in the high gear, wherever we may be on our own path, the only one that counts, up the mountain of God. So Swami was saying in the chapter on divine communion that we've been reading with, sitting at his feet, listening to sometime, And he said, remember that all help that you have received has not come to you from outside, but it has come from the very bottom of your own soul. Another one of his one-liners, you know, the marquees on Broadway, your name up in lights. I do have the feeling, Swami, that while he expands, if you will, on the axiomatic single phrases, single words almost, of Swami Vivekananda, whose birthday literally it was yesterday, and whose birthday we'll be celebrating here Sunday, 2 days from now. Expanding on it, he does so in a way that immediately gives us this other realm and brings in the concept that India is bringing to the West, is bringing to America, that we so desperately need, the awareness of a world beyond, a world within, and that world is the world of communion with God. So I'm going to start here just for a moment, if I may, Swami, and get started here. The highest ideal, remember the topic of the chapter is divine communion, of divine communion, and he has that with a capital D, or the attainment of God consciousness, all one word, dash, does not come through ceremony or ritual, oh boy, here he's on a roll tonight, nor by muttering passages from the scriptures, nor by counting beads, nor by confessing to a priest, nor by worshiping the departed spirit of any holy man. These may be helpful to those whose souls have not awakened to spiritual truth, meaning the world of superconscious waterfall. But God consciousness, I love it that he combines it all in one word, comes through the realization of our true nature, which is eternally one with the pure, blissful, and all-knowing divine spirit, capital S. As I like to think, one axiom, it's a very interesting thing that one has to consider even as one comes the first day or two into the path of spiritual life in the Vedanta Society. Is India right in its, how shall I say it, its evocation, its presentation, that reality with a capital R is one shining infinity? And if that's the case, a lot of things follow. And they follow for each of us in his own way as we go up the mountain of God. I think it's well to note that in the Vedanta Society, the Ramakrishna Order of India, the goal, however you describe it or whatever, is the top of the mountain. We are all Advaitists. That is to say, those of us who have come to the idea that rather than there be nothing, there is something. And that something cannot be the ephemeral things like a cloud which passes and changes and whoops, it's gone. If there's something, that something has to be one infinite shining. One infinity shining. So we all have our marvelous ways of making music, right? And the band and the parade, like Chaitanya's father. Incidentally, Swami, you and I, and when we were at Dakshineshwar, they showed us a path outside the temple where Sri Ramakrishna practiced his sadhana and gave his emanation to the world, where he, Sri Ramakrishna, had had a vision of Chaitanya, who I now can say with some fervor, lived in the late 14, early 1500s. And he saw him with his band of minstrels walking along, dancing and singing in the name of the Lord. And Sri Ramakrishna was quite something. He also divined that at least one of his present inner circle, he said he saw in that group. So I'm going to ask you, Swami, if you'd like to start off. There are many paths that lead to such realization.
There are many paths that lead to such realization. Each of these paths is described in Vedanta as the method of attaining this supreme consciousness. Those who practice yoga sincerely, keeping the attainment of divine communion and God consciousness as the highest ideal, should not stop until it is acquired. Life is not worth living if we cannot become conscious of our divine nature in this life. What good can be gained by living like slaves to passions and desires? What shall we gain for our souls by attiring our bodies in rich raiment, or by living in beautiful mansions, or by filling high positions in the state or country? These may be of great value to those whose aim is not higher than the attainment of earthly comforts and pleasures of the body's scarce.
And no
Why is there a
knowledge.
question mark?
Yeah.
These may be of great value to those whose aim is not higher than the attainment of earthly comforts and pleasures of the body's stay.
I see. If you take the stay out, you're in fairly good shape. What do you think? Body question? Does body stay mean anything to you?
I don't know, I still don't understand.
Okay, if you just say body period, then question mark, I think it makes sense. I'm going to erase it.
Not more than 5 or 6 scores of years, but remember that the soul life is not confined to the life of the body, but it is from eternity to eternity.
Please continue.
What are you going to do for your souls? Have you gained anything for the soul? The treasures of the earth do not enrich the soul, and comforts of the body cannot long satisfy that soul which is overburdened with cares, anxieties, sufferings, and worries, and which is obeying the commands of hundreds of masters, internal and external. The pleasures of the senses do not satisfy the soul, which has realized the transitoriness and ephemeral character of the worldly objects. No family ties and earthly relations can ever quench the thirst of that soul which longs to drink the nectar that comes through divine communion alone. No earthly thing can stand in the way of that soul which eagerly seeks the path to return home and rest there peacefully after the tiresome journey along the byways in the maze of the phenomenal world. Vain are the hopes of those who try to be happy by acquiring wealth or the pleasures of the senses and comforts of the body. Since the beginning of the history of mankind, no human soul can ever become truly happy or peaceful or blissful in this life by pursuing the pleasures of the senses and comforts of the body. Therefore, Vedanta says, if a man becomes master of the whole world, still he is not happy because he wants something else. Jesus says, and this is a quote, "What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul?"
Now,
Unquote.
Swami, you've got one of these marvelous paragraphs which goes on for 2
Yes.
pages, part of 3 pages. Would it be all right if I had a little fun there, paddling? So he's all through tried to understand a larger sphere of the use of the words. You see, words have what connotations? Divine communion. And now he is almost again linking the symbolic expression of divine communion, which Jesus presented to his disciples, as I like to say with a farm background, on Thursday night. And now he's taking the inward meaning of what is really a mystical worship as it has become especially in the Church of, uh, they talk of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Church of Rome. The fact that in every church in this country and every other one, the Mass is celebrated at least once a day. And we know somebody in our country now who goes to Mass early in the morning before he starts his day serving the people of this country. So divine communion has now, like leaving the earth, if you will, a spaceship. We're looking back on the earth, this beautiful blue planet, and we are in the outer realms of the spheres of space. And divine communion now means the inner awareness and relationship to God. So he says here, neither happiness nor immortality can be bought by the almighty dollar. One may be the father of many children, but he must be a fool who expects to be happy on account of many children. True happiness comes to a soul when it renounces the foolish idea of becoming happy through sense pleasures and earthly enjoyments and seeks God consciousness, capital G, by entering into the gate of divine communion, capital D. And here, my dear friends, don't you see, India has come to our rescue, and not a moment too soon. The great thing that's happening in this millennium and then since Krishna was born, as I like to say, crashing of the waves of mysticism, the knowledge and the intimate yearning to be one with the one shining infinity of superconsciousness, crashing of the waves of mysticism of the East on the rocks of the analytical mind, which we have inherited really from both our Jewish foundation and Greek naturalism. I told you, I think before, that in college that some wags in the world of philosophy were saying, well, Western civilization is a thin veneer of Jewish mysticism covering or on over Greek naturalism, which means scientific analysis, that kind of logically dividing things up with the left hemisphere. And I knew, because I was in the church of a marvelous mystic named Harry Emerson Fosdick, America's preacher. He preached on Sunday the radio through all of America. And I know a shoeshine boy, my companion at the University of Chicago Divinity School, Lowell Wooden, then AME, then to become an Episcopal priest, who was shining shoes in Jacksonville while he was listening. And another man who was plowing in a field of Iowa, who was listening to Dr. Fawcett. So I knew very well that Western civilization, that is to say, the one we call home, was really a foundation of Jewish mysticism with a thin veneer of Greek naturalism. Now comes the superconsciousness waterfall to give us earthly life and to help us finally understand the meaning of the phrase, which I've always thought is our divine scripture, that the inalienable rights of every human being born into the concept of the cosmos, the cosmic poem of God, inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And while we know the pursuit of happiness is the aim, we're seeking it in all the wrong places. I like to think that the problem of the bar is not exactly the bar itself. When one enters the tavern and seeks to become intoxicated, he's really searching for God. He's entering a temple, if you will, of the assumed pursuit of happiness. But he wants a happiness that's unalloyed and will never end, not to end with a, binge on Sunday night and a hangover on Monday. And the Swamis in India is such good fun. They say the sad part, the tragedy is that you can never get drunk enough. So here India comes to tell us where happiness is to be found. And happiness, my friend, source of happiness is God. And he's already told us that it's deep within. So let's just see how far we got there. If you're willing, Swami, would you pick it up at he who has entered that gate?
He who has entered that gate by the sincere and earnest practice of yoga and has succeeded in regaining his true nature sees the divinity everywhere. To his eyes, the beauty of human face or of a landscape appears infinitely more beautiful because behind that beauty he sees the infinite source of all, the source of all beauty, and knows that this eternal beauty is but a partial expression of that divine beauty. He feels divine presence in music as well as in every sound that enters his ears. Such a soul perceives the divinity in every object of the senses. Then the mysteries of life and death are solved. The whole life, which seems to us meaningless, unfolds the higher purpose, nobler and more spiritual meaning to one who has reached God consciousness through divine communion. He whose soul communes with the divine spirit within does not care for any celestial felicity. He does not want anything of this world. He is serene, peaceful, restful, happy, and always contented, free from worry, anxieties, misery, sorrow, suffering, and fear of death. He knows that he is divine.
In italics.
If the whole world persecutes him, tortures him, and cuts his body into pieces, even then he resists not, but blesses his persecutors and gently utters, quote, I am spirit divine, swords cannot pierce me, fire cannot burn me, the pains of the body cannot affect me. I am immortal.
And spirit is capital S.
I am in the sun, in the moon, in the stars. Nay, I am the soul of the persecutor's soul. I am he, I am he. If the whole world goes, I do not lose anything by it. Unquote. He says, quote, I bow down to my divine spirit, which does not possess anything, yet which is the master of all that exists in the universe, or will exist in the future, unquote.
Well, so I don't know about you, but I have trouble breathing. Hyperventilation is just around the corner. Dear brothers and sisters, incidentally, it's like a letter where you can't give the emphasis and the emotion and even the accent on the syllable. Here, it's worthy to note that when he says right after blessing them that despitefully use you and trying to love something in the enemy, it's important to recognize that he says, I am he with a capital H, meaning the one infinite spirit. So hasn't this been rewarding,
Yes,
Swami?
wonderful.
You are doing some good job picking them out. I'd like to just take a minute to breathe deeply. This wonderful man who preached, right, in downtown LA, I believe. He was at Swamiji House.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know for how long after Swami Vivekananda had been there in 1900 in South Pasadena. But didn't he go from there to talk to people inside? Yeah, I think he did. I'm quite sure, in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And then in Brooklyn particularly, and in New York for 20 years. Brooklyn is an interesting place. I find New York fascinating because it is a cosmopolis. It is cosmopolitan, cosmos. Somebody, I think, has very rightly said, at least of those days, that it was a collection of neighborhoods, little villages, if you will, Little Italy, for example. And a lot of people have not had occasion, or need they have, perhaps, to know much about the stirring story of little old New York. But founded by the Dutch from the point of view of the Western European, in a sailing ship, the captain of which was an Englishman named Henry Hudson, who had been put up to the job by a man named Emmanuel van Meteren, who had a very interesting spiritual background. His daddy was a printer in Holland. And the soldiers of the Inquisition came charging through Holland and burst into the workshop or the home, whatever, of Emmanuel's mother and father. And they turned to his mother and said, "What's in that desk?" And she said, "Some papers." And they left it alone. And then the desk, because Holland was a place of great freedom in those days, was the translation of Miles Coverdale's Bible in English, which the daddy was printing. So we won't follow that trail anymore, excepting to say that she named her baby Emmanuel, God with us. And he was the, I forget what you call the envoy of some sort, to England from Holland. And Henry Hudson and he were friends. So somehow Emmanuel van Meteren got Henry to ride the Dutch ship, was it the Half Moon, or that was Sir Francis Drake? I think I have to think about that. Yeah. And there was a sort of a big ocean lining, almost like a Mississippi paddle wheel ship called the Hendrik Hudson that used to ply the waves from New York to Albany. I took it one night. But as the seasons rolled, you had 5 separate counties with metropolitans, somewhat more rural in Staten Island, and they were 5 separate. They weren't one city. I don't think New York became one city until about 1890. And Brooklyn, in what is still called Kings County, Queens is in Queens County, was quite a separately interesting place, Brooklyn being a Dutch word. And it was intellectual, a little like Chicago. A lot of people don't realize how intellectual Chicago is, where all the railroad trains meet. You see, all the tracks meet there. Vivekananda's capital city in the United States. So here the Swami is speaking in Brooklyn shortly after it has joined with all these other counties, still separate counties. The borough of Brooklyn, the borough of Manhattan, in this super giant califragilistic, whatever we got, expialidocious city they call New York. Swami, are you ready to take us to the next chapter?
Sure.
And is it the one that you have?
Yes. The very next one in the book is chapter 13, Way to the Blessed Life.
Wow.
And it starts out with a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. They attain to the blessed life who have ceased to be wicked, doubts are cut asunder, senses are subdued, and hearts are undisturbed by desire and passion, who love to do good to all creatures, who have realized the truth and whose inner self is molten into the essence of divine self, unquote. It's Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 25 and 6.
And we're reminded that Jesus said, you shall know the truth, which is in a capital T here, and that's what the truth is, and the truth shall make you free.
In the whole animal kingdom, man alone is capable of solving the problem of life. Other animals live, but they cannot ask what life is, nor can they understand its purpose or the source from which it proceeds. The human beings alone are endowed with intelligence enough to ask such questions. They alone can understand the purpose and aim of life, and can trace its source and know the various aspects through which the life principle manifests itself in this world of phenomena. From time immemorial, this problem of life has been discussed over and over again, and various conclusions have been arrived at by different philosophers and thinkers of all ages and all climes. Some say that life is a great blessing. It is a source of unbounded joy and happiness, and is blessedness itself, while others hold that life is not worth living, because it is full of misery, sorrow, and suffering, disease and pain, and its end is death. It is true that our earthly life is beset with misfortune, distress, pain, anxiety, and disease, and also various other sufferings which arise from the constant struggle for existence. Yet none but the superficial thinkers will maintain that life is not worth living, or death is its goal. When we understand the true meaning of life, we know that life is opposed to death, as light is opposed to darkness. Life, in its most abstract sense, means being. It is the same as being or existence, and death means non-being or non-existence. Where life is, there death cannot exist. If life be a reality, then what we call death must be unreal. That which lives or exists can never die or become non-existent, and that which does not live in any form whatever and never becomes existent. Existence can never become non-existence, and a non-existence can never become existence. Footnote, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 16 says, Nasato vidyate bhavo, nabhavo vidyate sataha. Such is the final conclusion of the modern science, as it says that everything in this world is not lost. Everything is indestructible.
All right.
This chapter
Yeah.
got a ways to go, so if you want to.
No, you've got to at least finish the sentence.
Oh, I finished the sentence.
As life or being is death. Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got to find out where
Where
you
the
are.
footnote is. Top
Oh,
of
yeah,
the
there's a
footnote.
footnote. I'm reminded of Tennyson's phrase, which our founding Swami found worth remembering. Life is real, and life is earnest, but the grave is not its goal. Death to death, and ash to ashes, was not spoken of the soul. So after the footnote, it says that existence, which we read, can never become non-existence, and a non-existence can never become existence. The difference between the apparent and the real, which is the contribution of the path of knowledge, infuse as it may the life of the individual seeker, soul seeker. And Swami used to say, don't be a seeker of God, but a seer of God. Feel, experience, invite within your heart the love and light of God. Light being jnana, love being bhakti. So this, he says, is the law of nature, apparent, and reality. That's what the Jnani tries to slice clearly right from the beginning. And some other night might go there, but Sri Ramakrishna says first jnana and then bhakti. As one's past develops, one can reach the point at which the illumined souls, the free souls, come back to share their insights with others on how to find a way. The Vijnana is the highest manifestation of a human creature. And for what possible reason would they do that? Having experienced perfection within their own souls. For love. So, here we go. Whatever exists will continue to exist. Such being the law, whether we consider our earthly life as worth living or not, we cannot say that death is the goal of life. As life or being is deathless and indestructible, so it is birthless and beginningless. That which is subject to death is a compound thing. This is quite important. And has a beginning. But that which does not die is simple, and therefore has no birth and no destruction. Every compound thing, things as we imagine made up of molecules and atoms, for example, will be evanescent, will be a seeming plurality in an existence of oneness. So, if we look around in this world of phenomena, we shall see that that which is birthless is deathless also. And as life is opposed to death and has no beginning, life is beyond death and birth. Again, that which is birthless and deathless, and this is another essential thing here, does not change. But that which changes, in quotes, is within the realm of birth and death. As life or being in its true sense is beyond that realm, it cannot change its nature or decay. Would you like to refer to John Dobson for a moment, Swami? Tell us what he was saying, the words he used about the ultimate reality?
The infinite, undivided, unchanging? Is that,
Yes.
Yes.
Be like that. All right, so we'll say then that there is no sorrow, suffering, misery, decay, death, or change of any kind in true life. Oh, this man's words. Turn out the light, Swami, true life will still be glowing in the dark. It will. And therefore it is blessed. The Swami, Abhedananda, really does bring music to the words. And I know somebody else who does that too. There is no sorrow, suffering, misery, decay, death, or change of any kind in true life. All of a sudden lights up, and therefore it is blessed. It is blessedness itself. So I'm over now.
True life is the eternal and self-existent power which animates all things and is the source of all activities and all living forms. That power manifests in the animal and vegetable kingdoms as well as in man. From the minutest protoplasm up to the greatest man, wherever there is any sign of life, there is expression of this all-pervading eternal power, which is unchangeable and one in its essence. Electricity is one universal and inscrutable force, but on account of various ways in which it is made manifest through different electric machines, it appears in many forms as heat, light, and motion. We see it every day in the electric cars, that one current gives motion, light, and heat. So it is with the universal mysterious life force. It is one, although appearing many, when manifesting through numerous forms of existence. We say, therefore, we may therefore say that true life is one in essence, but its apparent expressions are numberless. Our earthly lives are so many expressions of true life, which is blessedness, one and eternal. Life being real, its apparent expressions must be the expressions of one reality too. These expressions are what we call apparent life. They are like so many reflections of the true and universal being of the universal.
Of the universe.
Of the universe.
The true and universal being of the universe. All right.
These expressions or manifestations of that universal life vary in different individuals because of the variety of conditions upon which those reflections depend. Again, the conditions being subject to change, the reflections or expressions of true life appear as changeable. The apparent life can shape itself in manifold ways, according to the conditions of its environments, and evolve from the lower to the higher, and from the limited towards the unlimited. Our apparent or earthly life is nothing but a symbol of that eternal life principle, conditioned by time and space. True life or being or blessedness is beyond time and space, and is not bound by conditions of any kind. It is not subject to the laws of phenomena. It is independent and perfect, while the apparent life is dependent upon the laws which govern the world of phenomena, and also is conditioned by time and space. True light or real being does not need any help from outside. I wonder if that was supposed to be life instead of light.
Well, it's L-I-T-E.
Yeah, it's a little suspicious, isn't it?
True life, I'm sure.
I think it means true life or real being does not need any help from outside. It does not require anything from beyond itself. It is self-reliant, self-complete, self-sufficient, and self-loving, while the apparent life, being an imperfect reflection of the true life, depends upon the conditions of the environment and represents imperfectly those higher qualities of self-reliance, self-completeness, self-sufficiency, self-love, and independence, which make true life a blessed and perfect whole. When the apparent life separates itself from the true being and isolates itself from the life of the universe, the partial reflections of these higher qualities in the apparent life are then known as selfishness.
Well, if we examine the relation of this apparent life, waking state, we'll say, for most people, many people, to the real life, you see, even energy, even electricity, energy, as we say, seen from inside, is experience. That was Whitehead's noble contribution to Einstein's fundamental statement that E, capital E, the only thing capitalized in the whole equation, equals M, a little m. The C squared, John used to say, John Dobson, our astronomer philosopher, is just put in there to correlate two different systems of measurement, like metric and English or something like that. And then Whitehead says that energy seen from inside is experience. The experience of which they're speaking is the reality. And it took me a long time, Swami, but I finally saw the unity between Satchitananda, existence, knowledge, bliss, it came fairly easily that existence then, in the post-Einsteinian world of energy being everything and matter just being congealed energy, that existence is consciousness, even energy seen from inside is experience. And then it finally dawned on me, what is the nature of the consciousness? Well, it's Ananda, it's bliss, it's love. So, they were talking about that today. Were you there? They were talking about, I think it was Satya saying, well, are they all one? And they are. All right, and of course I think that they're life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and Jefferson was on to something, and he needed a little more help from India, and of course it's just amazing. People would be astonished to find out these things as we do, that he had a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and he sent it to his renewed pal, whom he had some severe disagreements with during their time running for president against each other, John Adams, in a 20-year letter writing experience, because Benjamin Rush said, you fellows used to be friends, why don't you try it again? And they did. And John Adams writes back, marvelous letter, in effect, dear Tom. But he's saying, thank you very much for the copy of the Gita, Geeta, that you sent me. So there within, we have to assume that Thomas Jefferson finally read that the pursuit of happiness, which makes the Declaration of Independence entirely different from the Constitution. You know that story about the Constitution? I love it. Man comes up before the judge. He says, Your Honor, he says, am I never going to become a citizen? He said, I don't know the United States is, I don't know the Constitution. The judge takes his gavel and sententiously raps it on the bench. He says, don't you worry about the Constitution, you're a citizen. So it's quite something that this man finally had to realize that the source of the true happiness which he sought is within, and it is of God, with God, and one with God, very God, living God itself. Very God, as I say. All right. So if we examine the relations of apparent life to the real life, we understand there's nothing but a part of that universal life. As a part is related to the whole and cannot live independently of the whole, and as like a bubble in an ocean, and as a ray of light or a reflection is related to the sun and cannot exist independently of the sun, so the apparent life is related to that true being, which is called blessedness and cannot exist independently. Okay, Swami.
Like true life, this apparent life possesses self-love, but unlike the self-love which is in the true life, it is a love of the particular and not of the whole. True life, or being, loves itself, or the whole, and as the whole is God, its love is divine. It lives in God and loves God. The self-love in the apparent life is love of a part alone, as separated from other parts and isolated from the whole of God. And therefore it is
The whole
selfishness.
or God, the same thing. Yeah.
Whole or God.
Uh-huh.
What did I say?
Oh.
Never mind, I can't seem to read.
That's the same thing. But it's
The apparent self-love is nothing but an attachment to the transitory conditions through which the eternal life expresses itself on the physical plane. True life loves nothing but one unchangeable personality which is identified with the non-eternal form. Whoa, there's a footnote that goes on forever.
Well, since he mentions fiction, I'd like you to, or I will be
Yeah,
glad
go
to.
ahead.
Shall I dive into it? The Swami lived among us, as they say, of Jesus. And he lived among us long enough, at least to, I'm grateful, to appreciate the little rays, as he says, of reflected sunlight that one finds in Western civilization, of which we were speaking at the beginning. In, for example, our philosophy. Yeah, we've had our mystics, and the mystic in English words seeks union with God. Those terms for which the East has such an abundance, such abundant setups in nirvana, samadhi, Satori, the Zen Buddhist, which Ramakrishna followed all these paths and found at the top of the mountain the experience is exactly the same. So therefore, even in the West, way back when, remember my friend St. Martin of Tours, flourishing in, say, 393 or something AD, said all mystics come from the same country and speak the same language. They speak the same language and come from the same country. So when he finds a mystic in the West, he'll discuss it. And it makes us feel good. We got one, and he got 1,000 to 100,000. That's all right. That's why they came to our rescue. So it says here in the footnote, such is also the divine confession of the mystic philosopher J.G. Fichte, when he says, quote, life itself is blessedness, capital B. And that he says life itself is blessedness, I said. It is all the quote. It cannot be otherwise. For life is love and whole form and power. The whole form and power of life consist in love and spring from love. It's got lovely asterisks in it like stars. Further, love, capital L, is satisfaction with itself, joy in itself, enjoyment of itself, one shining infinity, and therefore blessedness, capital B. Look, he's given Fichte his role on the stage. And thus it is clear that life, love, and blessedness, all capital letters, are absolutely one and the same. So he's on a roll. Here he goes again. Fichte. Being, dash, I say again, dash, being, capital B, and life, L, capital R, once more one and the same. And thus we have opened the way toward an insight into the characteristic distinction between the true life, capital TL, which is one with being, reality, you see, and the mere apparent life, which insofar as it is mere appearance is one with nothingness. The apparent and the real. Being is simple. Wow, wouldn't John love this phrase? I don't think he ran into it. Unchangeable, ever the same. Appearance is a ceaseless change, a continual floating between birth and decay. Therefore, is also the mere apparent life a ceaseless change. The central point of all life is love. The true life loves the one. O, big O, as in Om, of course it's actually A-U-M, but Om, unchangeable and eternal. The true life loves the one, unchangeable and eternal. It's got everything capitalized. He's a mystic. That object of the love of the true life is what we mean by the name God. The true life thus lives in and loves God. To be united with the beloved object and molten into its very essence is blessedness, capital B. end quote. Fide, which is Latin for see, the doctrine of religion in Fichte's popular works, 1873. Our buddy. This is the man that sat in the chair that Swamiji provided for him for having our birthday for Swami Vivekananda this Sunday, remember? It was actually yesterday. It's the man that came to America to make a big splash at the Parliament of World Relations 1893. And among other things, demonstrate interfaith harmony. He pulled the chair out, said, Vedanta, why don't you come over to America for me? And he sat in that chair with us. As they say, Chief Seattle actually, perhaps it's the spirit of his words, but they were redacted and made more poetic later. Is supposed to have said to the people of the time, Franklin Pierce's time, when they were talking about putting the American Indians in Washington State on a reservation. He said, your God came and lived among you. I think he actually said, and walked with you as friend with friend. So Swami, how did we get here?
We just have a couple other lines at to finish the paragraph. But there's
I think I'm going to leave it though, Swami, because it's so beautiful with Fichte. He actually had said, if you remember, in the line that you ran up to there, true life loves nothing but one unchangeable personality, which is identified with the non-eternal form. That means the avatar, God is man. On account of, but the point is that true life loves nothing but one, unchangeable. God love you, man.
Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Peace, peace, peace.